All right, guys, I think we're live. It's Rick Ginn here with Flip with Rick. And for those of you that don't know me, my name's Rick Ginn, and you guys are probably very familiar with my son, Zach Ginn. And I taught him how to do this business, and he is very active. So it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter your experience level. I am here today to help as much as I can, and I can answer any questions. So let me give you a couple tips for the things I know I can help you out the most with. For those of you that know me, have bought like some of my products on the line, I am pretty much an expert at marketing. So if you have questions about marketing, or you're just getting started in wholesaling, or heck, if you're just looking to buy your first real estate investment property, you're in the right space. So if you have a marketing question, I think that's really if I was in your shoes, I would be picking my brain on marketing. So marketing is what's led me to, I'm now 17 years in flipping real estate. And I remember thinking back when I first left my corporate career, like, am I gonna run out of deals? And I can proudly tell you, 17 years later, I've never had a shortage of deals. And that's completely credited to my ability to market. So first and foremost, if you're getting into the real estate game and you definitely want to do the wholesaling part, you've got to learn how to truly market. So I'm going to wait for some people to jump on here. And then what I'll do is waiting for everybody to get on. Let's jump in and talk about the market. So as I said, if you got a question, just go ahead and post it, and I will do my best to figure out the technology and answer your questions. As I said, I committed for at least an hour. So if you got a question, post it. I'll give some people to get time to get online. For those of you that have never met me before, I'm actually Rick. So I came up with the Flip with Rick probably about 12, 13 years ago. And Zach led into my Flip with Rick program, and we basically work as a team together on it. So let's go over like some market issues that are going on. And we are actually July 10th. Oh my God, this year's flying by. So crazy year, especially with the coronavirus. And there's a couple things that you really need to be following in your current markets. It doesn't matter if you're in Florida, South Florida, if you're in Indiana, if you're in California. The two key indexes you really want to be watching right now is the evictions. As you know, around the country, most governors at the state level have frozen evictions. And so what this means is, it doesn't mean the renters don't owe money. It basically means that when it comes to a court proceeding, which this to give you layman's terms, if you prove they haven't paid the rent and they don't have a valid case and they don't fight you in court, or they lose in court, then the judge issues what they call a writ of possession. And this is the power granted to have the renter removed from the property. As of right now, in most states, I don't know about all of them, but I know in Florida, it's been frozen. Now, in the state of Florida, we're frozen until August 1st. And they keep extending it 30 more days. My biggest concern, so those of you, if you guys want to chime in what states you're in, if you're experiencing the same thing. I know in California, they've frozen evictions indefinitely. And what happens is, listen, I think most tenants actually want to pay their bills as long as they have a job. But some people will take advantage of this situation. So if tenants think you don't have the ability to kick them out, which they know it, and they want to take advantage of not paying the rent and maybe stockpile some cash, they can do it. Eventually, they're going to get evicted, but it's a pain in the butt, like when you're a landlord. So these are things you want to know and follow on these stats. They're important, especially if you're going to be a wholesaler. You need to know what you're getting into when you buy a property, with what we call a holdover tenant. And that's usually a tenant that's not paying rent, that probably drove the previous landlord crazy to have you buy it to get like a really good deal. So evictions, that's number one. And by the way, the rental delinquency rate, which means the rate of people not paying their rentals, their lease, same thing, is around, I've seen anywhere from 16 to 20%. So it just seems to be ticking up. So as this COVID lockdown and as more cases tend to pop up here, this is going to have an impact on the real estate market. The question is, when are they going to start like the eviction process? So I obviously follow it very carefully in Florida. I would love to hear feedback on what's going on in your markets, particular states, especially if you're in California, because it seems absolutely nuts there to ban evictions or even foreclosures indefinitely is kind of a scary proposition for us investors who want to buy and flip real estate. So the other one is you really want to track. So number one, your eviction stats for your current state. You can Google them. It's actually aggregate data from all. I don't know how they collect it. I just know I follow it. So anywhere from 16 to 20%. The other one you want to follow, which is really of important attention for us, is the mortgage delinquency rate. And the mortgage delinquency is a measure of people that are not making their current mortgage payments. So there's a lot of people out there that have a mortgage. A majority of Americans have a mortgage on their property. And when they do that, they get behind. Now, I'd have to look up and see, let me see where I put it. I'd have to look up and see what the normal delinquency rate is. But for the mortgage delinquency right now, it's up to 7.76%. That's a big number of what we're normally seeing. Usually it's well below that. I'll have to look up the number. I'll look it up for you while you guys are waiting to come online. But when you really want to freak out is when you see it hit double digit. If you see it around 9 or 10%, that means 1 out of 10 mortgages people are not paying for in the United States. And remember, this has a lag effect. So as people can't work, or they lost their job, or they're lacking the income, it becomes a real nightmare for them. Renters and landlords. Let's see here. Bear with me. Let's see. Average mortgage delinquency rate. So it's at 7.76 now. Wow. Let's see. I'm pulling it up here. Come on, guys. I'm here for questions, so I'm live. So take advantage of it. I haven't done this actually in a really long time, and actually I really enjoy doing it. So it usually looks around here around maybe 3%. And they're saying it could be high as 14%. So it sounds like we're already at double-digit numbers, but you got to understand this information gets reported monthly and then definitely quarterly, so you can just track the uptick when it goes on. So why does this matter to you? Well, if tenants aren't paying their rent, that means landlords are not getting positive cash flow, and it'll probably drive them nuts. So one of my biggest outlets for picking up deeply discounted house are for what we call really tired and worn out landlords. And so if eviction rates, if tenants aren't paying their rentals, it's just going to drive landlords nuts. So that's one of the things that you want to look for. Obviously, mortgage delinquencies, as people get behind, the houses wind up going into foreclosure. and foreclosure starts a whole chain of events. And to be honest with you, once the foreclosure rate gets to a certain level, then at some points the banks will have to make a decision to either foreclose or try to work with those clients. But honestly, if they don't have money to pay the mortgage, no forbearance in the world is going to fix them. And these houses are going to have to wind up being liquidated. So let me see here. Okay, I got a question here. Instagram question. Ask if it's wholesaling is illegal in Washington without a license. Ask if. So I'm not really overly familiar with, remember, every state has certain laws and you need to abide by them. I know I want to say it's I believe in Ohio, they are very, very strict, and they probably passed a similar law, what you're talking about in Washington. I'm not overly familiar with it, but there is a huge tendency for people to, for states to regulate what us investors do, because some people have abused their powers on it. So my suggestion to you on that one is research the law in your state and get familiar with it. So find out what there's. So if you have to be licensed, to be honest with you, it's not the end of the world. I will tell you, I go on record, I would avoid getting licensed. And what I mean by being licensed is usually you have to go and get your regular real estate license. If you don't want to be a real estate agent, then getting your license is counterproductive. So if you have the option of not getting it, I don't have a license, 17 years. But if I was in like Illinois or Washington and say it was required, and I haven't looked that up, then all you have to do is pass a test, and you're going to have to give additional disclosures on your marketing. So, but I would research that law, and I would actually try to meet with a lawyer to help explain it, to clarify on it for you. But unfortunately, there are states going towards that. So I don't recommend you breaking the law. Another question here. Would you know what documents or paper for sellers to sign for a pre-foreclosure? So once again, that's a very specific, it goes state by state. So every state has a little bit different laws in pre-foreclosure. So let me give you like a rule of thumb. Here in the state of Florida, whenever somebody's in a foreclosure situation, meaning they're behind on payment, they can be at risk. So it's your job as the investor to disclose as much information as humanly possible. The more you disclose, the better off for you and the better off for the seller. I can't give you, every state's a little bit different. So in the state of Florida, just to give you a general coverage of this, anybody in a pre-foreclosure situation, including a short sale or any type of distress on the property, distress means they're in trouble, they're behind on payments, they have up to 3 days to cancel your contract with you. And you have to prove beyond a doubt that you gave complete disclosures, that you're an investor, you're doing this for profit, and you tell them what your plan is. The more honest you are, the better in this situation. So I can't give you the exact forms. Once again, if you briefly meet with a lawyer that specializes in your state, that's what I'm going to recommend. But your state laws usually will give very specific on what you have to do. But honestly, the more you tell and the more honest and transparent you are, the better off you're going to do. So here's a rule of thumb. If somebody's in foreclosure and they have a problem during the transaction with you, it's your job to make it right as soon as possible. Because if they put in a complaint and you're an investor, then it's going to go back to, did you give them full disclosure? Did you help them out? Honestly, if someone's in some sort of foreclosure situation, you need to hold their hand all the way to the end until you get the property sold. If there's ever a problem or they want to renege, it's just easier to get out of the contract than to fight them on it. So understanding that going into it, hopefully that'll help you out. Let me do one other question, and then I see you guys are putting questions online. First of all, thank you. Oh, cool. So those of you, he's commenting on the probate information. For those of you who follow me over the years, I give a specific course called Priority Probate System. You can go to Flip with Rick. Actually, I'll put a link up in here somewhere. It's a simple course that I sold way too cheap, and it helps out a lot of people with it. So it has a question. From calling on my probate list, I sometimes get people who say they want to sell but are still in the middle of the probate process. Is there still a way to sign the contract when folks are in the probate process? Yes, there is. So in a nutshell, and I'll continue on this question, the gist of my message to people in probate is give me a call. I can cut through all the red tape. I can cut through all the red tape of probate and quickly buy your property before the probate process is completed. Yes, you can do it. I've done over 100 myself. I do it on a monthly basis. And so the answer is yes to that. But you've got to learn the techniques and what to say. My course kind of shows you all. There have been a time where they say they are interested. We create rapport, but when I call back after a few weeks, they already sold the deal to another investor. What's your advice on closing these deals? Simple. Don't wait a few weeks to call them back. You have got to be on them, and you've got to follow through with it. Time is your biggest asset in probate marketing. Whoever can get to the lead first and build rapport is going to win, but you have to keep the consistent follow-up, and you have to stay on them. And the idea is to try to engage your prospect, which turns into a lead, as much as possible. So I hope that helps you with it. But yes, you can buy the properties before the probate is over. Most investors don't know how to explain it. If you check out my PPS system, actually, I updated it with my son, Zach. We showed you how to do the cold calling, a little bit more aggressive approach, because marketing has definitely ramped up. The difference between when I started in 03 and 04 and 2020, just the technologies move faster. So, okay. So I'm gonna give you one more question here, and then I'm gonna switch to the online question. So I see you, D guy. Hey man, I know a guy that is a wholesaler, and he's showing me the ropes. He's really big on only door knocking and does not really market the way others do. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but would you advise me to do door knocking or cold calls? I'm really good at cold calls. I did it before. Enjoy. He is not really big on cold calls. Just want to know your thoughts. So this is really simple. You've got to do what fits your personality and your style. Otherwise, it's not going to appear natural. So for full disclosure, I started out door knocking, and that's how we chase deals down. In today's market, you got Ring doorbells. Nobody knocks on the door anymore. And in a lot of counties, it's illegal. So if you're comfortable cold calling, rip through it. Do what fits you. It doesn't matter what medium you use to connect with people. If it's cold calling, if it's direct mail, if it's door knocking, if it's driving for dollars, do what works for you. Okay, so I get it. I believe door-to-door sales kind of builds your muscle to be able to handle rejection. But if you're going to quit doing it, just jump the cold calling now. So, okay, let's jump up. Let's see here. I got D guy here. What are some motivated sellers to cold call filter on PropStream? I'm cold calling vacant absentees, and I'm not getting a good hit. So good information, but tell me what market you're in, because I'm always curious, because I do have some familiarity with markets, with working with people over the 17 years on it. Sellers to cold call on PropStream. I'm cold calling vacant absentees, and I'm not getting a good hit. So I will tell you this. I love the vacant data in PropStream. I will tell you this, you're gonna have to do numbers. So now if you're stacking up vacant and absentee, to be honest with you, I would just focus on vacant, because think about it, if the property's vacant, it's typically probably already gonna fall under an absentee filter. So you might be over filtering it, but it's a numbers game, D. So it's a numbers game. We use PropStreams. Here's the beauty of PropStream. It's super convenient. God, I wish I had this like when I started. I mean, it's an amazing product. I get deals. We get deals off PropStream, but we have to consistently go through the numbers. It's not uncommon to go days, if not weeks, without getting like a bona fide lead with it. It's just a numbers game. And remember, everyone's chasing those same numbers. My recommendation to you is keep doing what you're doing on PropStream, but integrate some offline lists. Code violations, I love. Tax delinquencies, I love. You guys know where I am on probates. You absolutely have to incorporate all of them. But don't overthink it. Just pull up the vacants, and if it doesn't work in one part of town, switch to another one. Sometimes the data is just not as hot as other stuff. So my tip to you, just to let you know, on the vacant properties, that data is actually pulled from the United States Postal Service. So when the postman goes by, and I think it's, I don't know, 5 days in a row that the mail's accumulated, they put them in a vacant status. So either the owner puts it in a vacant status or the mailman does. And those are the ones that we truly want to target. And I could list. So if you guys got question on lists, I would be asking someone like me, like, you know, what are your favorite types of lists? Where are you getting them from? Oh, Houston. So by the way, I'm somewhat familiar with Houston. You actually have a really good market. It's not so much like, you know, like some of the other states, which the challenges are really there. What I would do is just go back, look at your vacant data. I'm not sure if you're crossing the absentee with vacant. In my opinion, a vacant is pretty much qualified as an absentee, and work with that. And then I would incorporate, PropStream's great, but you need to bring in, if you can get any type of offline lists, code violations, tax delinquencies, my absolute favorites. I got another question here. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna take, okay guys, keep the questions coming. I like to post them. If we can share them, then I can help other people that are gonna have the same questions. There is no dumb question. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. So take advantage of me, guys. I'm here. Let's see. I love the podcast. I'm 16. I want to get started in wholesaling. Is this possible at my age? I know you did it when you were young. So I know the question is directed towards Zach, and Zach basically started when he was 17 and flipped 3 of his own properties, and in 90 days actually exceeded, I think it was like 60 grand. But what I'll do is we can post in the comments here, we have a free ebook that actually Zach wrote, and just starts from the perspective of a 17-year-old getting started in the business. So, okay, I got another question here. What's up, Craig? I appreciate you coming online here. It's hard to get a probate list in, I assume it's South Carolina. Any suggestions on how to get a list besides going to the courthouse? So you have 3 options when it comes to probates. There's only 3. There's no other way you can do it, because I've tried it. Number 1, as you mentioned, if you can physically go to the courthouse, it's actually one of the best ways. And I know you're like, Rick, that's crazy. I don't want to physically drive down to the courthouse. You don't necessarily have to do it yourself. You can train someone how to do it. You just have to understand the process. If it's difficult enough where you have to physically go in, it is going to be just as difficult on your competitors. And if they don't have the can-do attitude, they're going to give up after a month or two. The reason I do so well in probates is because I never stop. I never stop. Most people try probates and they expect a quick fix and it falls apart. So number one is going to the courthouse. The second one is a lot of counties are going online now, and some will charge, I guess you call it like a licensing fee, but you set up a business account. Now it's like 100, maybe 200 bucks for the year. Well worth it. My suggestion, if your county is online, you definitely need to get online with them because all your competition is doing it. Now, the biggest problem is, why are counties fighting you so much, Greg? I'm going to tell you why. Because they're worried about the privacy information. There's a lot of people that are trying to abuse this information, and there's also what we call third-party list sellers, and that's option number 3. You can go to a third-party list seller. Here's my experience with that. It sounds really sexy, right? I pay you a monthly fee and you just feed me the leads online. Super, super sexy, right? The problem is you're getting very, very dated information, and they're very inconsistent in delivering them. So unless you're in a major metropolitan area, say like Miami, or say like Los Angeles, most list providers don't want to go to like small towns. So like in my town, which we have a population just over 100,000, and on my immediate local market, it doesn't work. They don't want to do it because they don't have enough subscribers to make it work. So I'm forced to either go into the courthouse or get online access. But here's the bottom line. At some point, they do have to give you the information. So I've always taught people just to be very, very, very consistent. So Craig, like, here's an idea for you. Craig kind of commented, like, it's only, I'll put this up here to finish off on your question. It's only online for our attorneys and paralegals. And we call that benchmark in the state of Florida. That might be the case. So here's an idea for a workaround. I love networking with attorneys. It's one of my favorite ways. When I first started, I actually worked with my local title company because one of the partners was an attorney, and guess what he had access to? To court cases. Now, I had to pay for it. I didn't even know how to sort the information. So they would give me these stack of lists, and I'd go through it. And then what I'd do is sit down with the girls at the title company, because they're so used to reading title, and they would tell me, okay, this one looks like it has a property. You're going to have to do your homework on it. And I'd sort them out like that. So I get it, Craig. The only thing you do is try to find an alliance with a local attorney. If you have a title company, most of them have an attorney tied into it. And obviously, you want to make sure you're feeding them business if you're going to ask them to do something for free or like a small fee for you. So that's kind of my suggestion with you. Obviously, the more you can foster a good attorney relationship, paralegal's not a bad one too. I used to find paralegals off Craigslist, for the way. Craigslist, there's a lot of paralegals just looking to do like freelance works, filing evictions, filing, simple motions, definitely in probate. If you could find a paralegal that had access to your county's data, that would be the way I would go. So start with your title company, see if it'll branch you off to an attorney that they work with, or maybe it's on staff. And then at worst, search Craigslist, look for paralegals, get a hunt. I know before that I offered to pay. So to get online access, they all make them pay. Like, there's no way around it. So it's usually like a couple hundred bucks. And if you offer just to pay for that, it'd be a lot cheaper than using like a list service. So I hope that helps out. But by the way, I cover this all in my priority probate system. It's really dirt cheap, guys, for the training you get to it. I think there's there's like 6 hours plus training. Plus, we show you the latest, greatest. I updated because I originally wrote that back in 2013, and it worked really, really well for 5 years. And then we've recently done an update to include all the latest and greatest tricks we're using with it, and kind of go from there. So great question, Craig. I appreciate it. So guys, keep the questions coming, because 17 years, I've done over 1,000 deals. There's very few things I haven't seen. So the more you want to share with me, the more I can help you out. Let me see what else I got going on. That's it. So, hey, if you guys have bought any of my products in the past, or you've connected me in the past and you just want to catch up, hit me a comment in here and we'll go from there. So I am going to take a sip of water, waiting for you guys. Let's see, I got some more coming here. So post them, guys. Let's answer some questions. Okay, here it is. Good afternoon. Hope all is well. Working on a deal and I am having the issue. What should I do? So I sent the contract to the seller for review with her attorney. I spoke to the seller today and she said that the attorney did not like the contract and he did not like the long period of financing for that amount. I told the seller that I understand that if she wants, she can have her attorney drop the contract, or we can schedule an appointment so that we can go over the contract and make adjustments. Was that the right thing to do? How would you have handled the situation? Thank you. Love what you do. So the old attorney objection. Let me have my attorney look it over. I'm going to tell you, based on tens of thousands of people I've dealt with, that's usually what we call a hidden objection. 90% of the time, it means you have not satisfied all of their objections. So as an investor, you can never, ever depend on leaving it in the hands of an attorney, because what's an attorney's job? Their job is to find problems. And when they do that, think about it. If you hand an attorney a contract and he goes, oh, that's perfect, great, sign it. It's hard for him to bill you. And honestly, it's like an ego-driven thing with attorneys. I've watched them nickel and dime perfect cash contracts that close in a week. So it drives me crazy. I get it. So let's talk about how we can prevent this. What you need to do when you're a seller. So I'm not really particular to the case, but when you have a financing clause, not completely used to that, but here's the catch, is what you need to do is get an agreement with your seller. So if they say, listen, here's what I would do. The minute they say, listen, I want to have my attorney look it over, and I just go like this, hey, Jill, let me ask you this. Are there any concerns you have with the offer I've presented to you? Is there any points that we can review over it? And they're going to go typically, no. Okay. So, I've offered you X amount of dollars. Here is my contingency. I just need to get, if you're doing financing, but even if you're talking about cash, this is it. And then you basically summarize the deal. So basically, if I can meet all that criteria for you, Jill, is there anything having you stop from doing the deal? And just by doing that agreement, so when it goes to the attorney and he says, I don't like it, you now can go back and say, Jill, what is it that your attorney doesn't like about it? And so you have to distinguish if it's the attorney that has the issue or she has the issue. A lot of times she's hiding behind the attorney to protect what she doesn't want to tell you. So 9 times out of 10, if you have an agreement and you know they're going to give it to an attorney, then you clarify exactly what you're going to do, and you can easily do it that way. So I hate the attorney thing, but unfortunately you can't stop people from reviewing stuff with an attorney. And if you're doing business the correct way, as long as you follow through on what you're exactly going to do, Most attorneys, for the record, come back with like little legal things. I will tell you this, do not under any circumstances have the attorney write the contract for you. He is not out for your best interest, and it's a real conflict of interest. What you can do is get a list of his recommendations to make changes, and then you can decide what changes you want to put in the contract. So I hope that helps you out. If you get an agreement with your seller up front and say, listen, if I buy the property by this date, is that going to make you happy and I get the cash in your account? Have them focus on what their end goal is, which is to sell the property with the least amount of headache to you. It's your job to follow through to actually do this for them. And if you're going to live up to your word and do it, what's an attorney going to do? Let's use the word therefore instead of hence. They'll get into legal jargon. Appease the attorney. Don't have them write the contract. Give them 3 or 4 recommendations, and then you can go back and reword your contract. And if the attorney gives you 3 things to check and they're minor, who cares? So here's a little hint for you. A lot of attorneys, they get huge objections over the deposit. Now, if you're a wholesaler buying a property for cash, and it's a really good deal, say you're getting it 50, 60 cents on the dollar, and he says, I need a deposit of $2,000 and you're only leaving one of $500, don't bite him on it, guys. You're going to say you're going to pay the same amount on the property. If you don't have the funds and you don't have the ability, get with someone that can work with you to solve that problem for you. Do not fight that. Would you be losing the deal? The dollar amount stays the same, but you change the deposit to appease the attorney. Just let them win that small battle and move on. So, okay. Craig's asking questions, so I'm gonna help Craig out today. So for a lease option disposition, do you just collect option fee and are they able to move in, or do you collect rental deposits plus first month rent like regular rental and option deposit? So for clarification, a lease option is really simple, guys. Everyone makes it so complicated. A lease option are 2 separate agreements. The first one is a lease, and a lease is just like a regular rental, and then an option. An option is I pay X amount of dollars to have the right to buy your property by this date. If I don't execute it, you keep the money. If I execute it, typically you take it off that sales price. So if the house is $100,000 and I left you a $5,000 option payment, the balance due, say it was in 5 years, would be $95,000. So Craig's question is specifically, you just collect the option fee, are they able to move in? Here's the beauty of this, Craig. You can do whatever you want. So the biggest thing you have to focus on when you're doing any type of creative financing, and by the way, guys, I absolutely love creative financing. And if you guys haven't geared up, it's getting ready to come real hard here, the end of 2020 and definitely 2021. When people get behind on their mortgages, it's a perfect opportunity to do like a creative financing. So this is how I look at it, Craig. I look at the cash flow. So I look at the part of the equation I don't have here is when you're acquiring the property. So when you control it from the seller, the question is, how much cash did I have to give them? Sometimes you don't even give them any cash, but for the most part, you usually have to coerce them with some sort of financial compensation. So if I'm collecting a very, very small amount, that gives you a ton of flexibility. If you had to shell out 7 or 10 grand, or I've seen it as high as 25, 30, then you really got to be careful. Because here's my theory is I believe any type of creative financing you should do, you should be in a positive cash flow situation. I don't understand if you left somebody $20,000 and you're only getting a $10,000 option payment, and then you're making $200 or $300 a month in cash flow, you're losing money. I don't care. You can paint that picture however you want. You're losing money because if I paid him 20 and I took in 10, I'm in a negative $10,000 position. Now, yeah, I know you'll make it up over time, but you have no idea what's going to happen. So, Craig, I let that kind of determine of how I acquired the property, and the lower money I take, the more flexible I can be. If I have, now the question is, first month like regular rental prop. So here's how I look at it. If someone's going to get a property, creative financing, and I'm selling it, is I know what the minimum standard is. And what is that? It's first, last, and security. So if it was $1,000, they have to come up with $3,000. Depends on that option fee. If I got a big giant option fee, I'm not really worried about a deposit at all. So, and then last, not as worried about it. So if I got a $10,000 downstroke for it, and I took the property over, say, for $2,000 or $3,000, I'd be more lenient. But here's what you need to focus on too: the quality of the tenant in there, so they can keep the cash flow rolling for you. So cash flow dictates all terms in creative financing, bar none. So good question. Keep them coming. And by the way, anything with creative financing, I've done just about every type of deal. I've encountered just about every problem that you can possibly come up with. So if you got a creative financing question, let's shoot, because there's nothing like experience. Okay. Rick, are you still selling the ROS system? Yes. So full disclosure on this, ROS system is something I've been using over a year and a half of my business with phenomenal results. And all it is a marketing system to engage your prospects like no other offer out there. The holdup, to be honest with you, is when the COVID hit, we decided it wasn't the best time to throw ROS out there. So the idea was to let investors settle down and get right with their own marketing. So I talked it over with Zach. I talked it over with a lot of people I partner up with, and decided we want the smoke to clear on this market, and I don't want to confuse people. And right now, guys, this is the time to get to the basics. So the most important thing you can do in real estate when you have challenging times is to get back to the basics. So to make sure my message was clear when I deliver this product, I want to make sure I have everyone's attention. So I've slightly delayed it. You're going to see a lot more stuff coming out about it, but I'm trying to let people get healthy, get past this COVID. A lot of people got to get back to work, and I feel kind of responsible not to inundate the market with a mixed message. So in my business, I've always been about the basics. I've never believed in having a giant staff. If you guys have noticed a trend, a lot of people that supposedly scaled like their real estate business, they've all had to dive back. And I've been through this before. I know exactly how it works. And to me, small teams work much more effective. I got into real estate to get more time and more time with my family. So there's a reason my son works in my business. I didn't make him. He wanted to do it because he saw the freedom I had. And so if you can get freedom, cash flow, and truly enjoy your life, it's not always about how much money you make, it's the quality of time that you have in your life with it. So let's do another question here. Good one though. Oh, so ROS systems, you'll see more about it. As I said, COVID came up. We decided the timing just wasn't right. Let's let everyone get back to basics because it's a really cool strategy. But COVID delayed a little bit. Listen to your podcast with Jamel. Love Jamel Gibbs. If you guys haven't looked him up, I'll put a link in here below. Great guy. It says you do not use your personal cell phone number on abandoned sites, I believe. No. What type of number should I use? So real simple here. The type of number you want to use is you can what we call a virtual number. They are so dirt cheap now. It's crazy if you don't use them. So my recommendation, I used a Vumber for a long time. I think it's $9.95, and then I think it's $3 or $4 for each additional number, and it's a month-to-month agreement. And by the way, you can text from there, you can get voicemail, and the whole 9 yards. The problem with putting on your cell number is if you violate a code or you piss somebody off in the code enforcement department, they're going to have a direct trail to you and you're going to get a citation. So in a lot of counties, it can be up to $500 a sign. So we don't want to get you in trouble with it. So my recommendation is Vumber. It's a really cool, it's really, really simple and it's basic. If you're just starting out, there's companies where you can buy a number, I think as low as $4 or $5 in a month. So it's not that expensive. And plus it gives you a little bit of privacy. If you get a stalker or somebody who's a little bit crazy, and you will get some of those, you can immediately get rid of them. And the reality is the number's not very traceable back to you. So if you put your personal cell phone, if you have any history on the internet, if you ever sold something on Craigslist, if you have a tie into eBay, it's going to go back and track you and they're going to nail you. And by the way, you don't want a fine associated with you on that. So I just picked up some signs and I didn't want to use my number after listening to you and Jamal laugh out loud. Did you have any suggestions? So Vumber, got one on here. Any tips on getting started in flipping or wholesaling? Yeah, just get started. So what I would do is spend some time and just do some research. The easiest way to get started, in my opinion, is to find someone that you want to be in their shoes. So the easiest way is you want to make sure you work with someone that's already done the hard work for you. So there's one or two ways you can do it. You can definitely do this business on your own. It's hard in the beginning. When I started out, I did good old-fashioned sweat equity. So we talked about putting out bandit signs. Bandit signs are an easy way to go out and get your number out there. So full disclosure, when Zach started in the business with me, it was 100% bandit signs. I gave him the bandit signs guy, he printed the bandit signs, he put them out himself, gave him a script, and he answered the phone. The key with it is he didn't spend 2 years studying online to figure out how to do it. So the main thing you want to do is get started. The other one is, if you want to get started right now, find somebody in your local market and pair up with them. It's much easier to split a profit with someone than to churn your wheels and make no money at all. If you can learn and earn while you do it, oh my God, that's even bigger. So it doesn't matter if you have money or not. I didn't have any money when I started this. I just went out and I put out signs and I answered phones. The other thing you can do if you're just getting started is driving for dollars, just going around collecting addresses and then just calling and see if they want to sell. If you get a hot lead and you're really uncomfortable and you haven't taken any type of mentoring or coaching, you can still find someone. You need to find somebody reputable in your local market. You start with Craigslist. I mean, we're not really doing like group meetups. Your local REIA, which is REIA, Real Estate Investors Association, dynamite place to network. They're probably doing online meetings and kind of go from there. Okay. Let me put up Brian's question. Question I get when asking a seller to take a land contract and I want to rent it out. What if your tenants trash the place and you take off and I don't want to hear from you again? So I'm going to make this general because everyone has different ways they buy a property. So if you're comfortable doing land contracts in your state, it's just a technical type of contract. So let's just talk about in general. So I'm going to move land contract because that gets like law specific on what you're trying to do. I get when I'm asking a seller to take a land contract and I want to rent it out. So basically you want to put the property under contract and then basically rent it out. What if your tenants trash the place and take care? Here's the key. If you do that, who is responsible to the seller? Okay, I can tell you right now, the seller, if they wanted to rent it out themselves, they would do it. They don't want to be responsible for it. So the real follow-up question here, and by the way, I love when you put more information on there, it helps me out. How do I reassure them? The biggest thing you have to do is sell them on yourself, Brian. I'm going to be the responsible one. So if you know you're responsible, Brian, you're going to do your absolute best to put the most responsible tenant you can in there, if that's your strategy. Doesn't matter if it's an in buyer and you're doing a creative financing deal or anything like that, is you're on the hook for it. So if something goes wrong with that property, you're responsible. So I would reassure them that say, the reason you called me and the reason we're talking and the reason you like my offer is because you like Brian, and I'm a responsible individual, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'll follow up. We have, and here's how I tell them, even if you don't, we have systems in place where we screen the tenants to make sure we get the most qualified person in there to protect injuries. It's my job to make sure they follow up, take care of the property. We do monthly property inspections, whatever you need to do. Because listen, if you only got one or two in the beginning, I guarantee you're going to do everything you can to follow up on the property, make sure you got the right person in there. So really important, man. Like I would have the same questions too. So what you want to do when you do that, and then you shift your focus back on them. And then what I do is once I satisfy that, I'm going to say, Mr. Seller, remember the goal here is to get the property sold so you can move to your house in the Carolinas and you and your wife can retire. And I get it. You either overpaid for this property or whatever you have to do. And so answer the question and then pivot back to it. So yeah, nobody wants the property trashed. I agree with them completely. Your job is to sell them on you. And let's face it, Brian, you don't want the property trashed either. And if it is, you got to fix the problem right away. The reality is if that happens, and it will happen occasionally, it's up to you to fix it and not burden the seller. Even if it happens, you're going to just have to fix the problem and move on. It's not their problem, it's yours. Remember, you're taking the risk on taking this deal. There's got to be upside in you making money. They're selling you the property so they can alleviate the headache. And if they're not selling you to alleviate the headache, then you don't have the right motivated seller. So I hope that helps. Keep the questions coming, man. Good questions, good questions. I got another one here. Let's see. Sarah asks, how many hours per week should you work in wholesaling? Man, I could do an entire hour-long video on this. Sarah, here's the key to this. It's whatever you want to work. So the really cool thing about wholesaling and real estate in general is it's not like when you go in and punch a clock at work. So those of you at traditional jobs, I worked for the same company for 11 years. My God, did I hate it. I actually enjoyed it when I first got out of college, but I learned to hate it real quick. And I had a really good paying job. I just didn't enjoy what you do. At some point, not everything's about money. And security to me is the ability to create money for my family. So in the beginning, when you started wholesaling, most people start out really excited, like, oh, I'm gonna go, this is fun. It's a blast, and it is, and it should be that way. The key for the people that last the longest, people like me, 17 years, is we just consistently try to have fun. And so I usually get up in the morning and I put in 3 hours of very collective work. And there's a routine. You collect lists, you follow up on leads, you run comps, you go through PropStream, you go to ListSource, you set up appointments for that day, the following day, and then you're setting up whatever has to be done to the properties from the flip, and then you deal with your buyers. So in the beginning, you should probably spend more hours because you're at a disadvantage and you want to learn the business as best you can. And that's my recommendation for you. But like right now, I mean, I'm fortunate. I mean, I can work 2 to 3 hours a day and really get results. But guys, I've done this for 17 years and I have people that work with me. I'm fortunate enough to have my son, Zach. He's very skilled at the trade. And if you guys haven't had time to spend time with him, probably the best cold caller that's ever worked for me, for sure. But I made him work in every department in my company. And I run a very, very small, lean team. And that's the key is I don't need all the giant overhead. I don't need all the stuff going on. So Sarah, if you have a current job and you're working, say 40 hours a week, you're going to have to put your grind on in the evening, and weekends are a big part of it. But once you make that shift, you can eventually work whatever you want. So if you want more cash, you just work a little bit more, or you grow your team. Okay, Phil, what's up, buddy? Are you doing any direct mail? So those, if you guys know about me, I started out doing direct mail. Actually, I love direct mail. For those who ever heard of the handwritten postcard system, I came up with it. It's just a crafty marketing product, and it was a handwritten postcard. So the answer to your question, Phil, in short, is yes, I do direct mail marketing. So if you want to do a follow-up question is, have you shifted your mindset in direct mail marketing, especially during the COVID crisis? And the answer to that one is yes as well. When you run a small, lean team and you can work virtually, the most important dollars you are going to spend is on your marketing. So it's our job as investors to make sure that marketing dollar is being stretched as far as it can. I'm the absolute best at stretching a marketing dollar. It's what I do. I've compared studies online with everyone. I see people in my market spending $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. I can consistently spend significantly less, and the key is I make much more profits. I love direct mail, but here's the difference. I've been doing this 17 years. I can quantify exactly, very close to what I'll make based on what I spend on direct mail. Really cool stuff. Is it more expensive? Yes. Stamps have gone up. If you guys notice, I think stamps went up 20% at the end of 2019, the biggest increase in US history. Number two, is the response rate or the effectiveness down on direct mail? Yes. You know why? Because people like us talk about it and we share it. Here's the difference. I never stopped doing it. I didn't stop. Just like I told you on probates, I didn't stop. Do I adjust and pivot? Absolutely. The biggest problem I see people doing in direct mail, and this is probably the biggest nugget you can take out of this, Phil, is they do the exact same thing every time. Mail pieces get saturated, and that's the problem with it. When I initially created the handwritten postcard, is people kind of missed the beat is you had the ability to change your message as much as possible. So I was guilty of this for almost 2.5 years. I used the exact same message because you know why? I could point, I could click, I could mail, and I just stopped thinking about it. We were getting deals off of it, but as the returns went down, the response rates went down, and the costs went up, I decided to pay attention, and that's how I came up with my rapid offer system. Don't worry, I will share it with everyone, I promise. Make sure you subscribe to our channel here, to YouTube, or join us on Facebook, because those are going to be the first ones that get it. But I'm all about creativity, because you've got to understand this. If a motivated seller gets 10 to 15 pieces of mail, which is what they get in my market, how are you going to stand out on them? So I remember 3 years ago, how I stand out is I did the Google image, and I would hire, actually in the beginning, we actually figured out how to do API codes. I'd hire people, I'd spend a bunch of money. And then the larger mail houses started figuring out how to do it to you. Here's the problem is, if 8 out of the 10 pieces all have the Google image on it, it just gets worn out and people get tired of it. And that's the real key. And the difference is you have to be creative in today's market. The reason my direct mail works is if they get 10 or 15 pieces, mine completely stands out. So somehow I love the fact that I can point and click and drop 10,000 mail pieces in probably about a minute. I can tell you, and Zach can actually reassure to you, I used to sit up like in the middle of the night, and we used to have a mail machine at printers, and I'd have 3 to 4 printers running like all night. My wife used to like, oh my God, it's so loud. But I was creative, man, and that's what makes a difference. So while everyone's doing the exact same thing, sellers aren't stupid. if you all have the exact same 10 postcards, there's no authenticity there, and they just like, they can't stand it. So be creative. Don't be scared to come up. By the way, all these mail houses, you now have the ability to create your own mail piece. So just do opposite what everybody else is doing. And that's what gets me usually the best results. And it's scary, it's a little intimidating. Make sure it's legal, make sure it's not kind of clickbait. Like have you guys ever seen the one like urgent letter or anything like that? Keith, I don't understand the question. Same thing with the script. Same thing with the script. Elaborate on me. I'll answer it for you. I got a little bit of time here. So we're kind of in overtime here. So get your questions in. I'll be happy to share it with you. Same thing with the script. Not sure what I mean by that, Keith. Give me an update. But direct mail, yeah, it works. But the key with direct mail, if you're new to it, test out certain markets before you go all in. I can tell you that because saturation does play a big key, and then you have to have a difference maker in your piece. Okay. I got another one, Brian here. He's getting smart on creative financing. Make sure I'm okay with time. So I'm going to answer Brian's question here. I'm in overtime, so let's get a lightning round. As many questions you can put in there, I'm going to answer as quick as possible. Awesome job, Phil. He's in Dallas, so love your city. Only been there once, but it's a really cool place. So stick in all your questions, and we're going to do a lightning round here. I'm going to try to wrap this up in like 10 minutes. So Brian, when trying to do subject to, the sellers often want to know how they get another loan in their name if we are keeping their loan in their name. So a couple parts to this question real quick. They actually have to have the motivation to first be able to sell you a property subject to. Most subject tos that we do, and you should be looking for, and remember guys, subject to just means you take over the existing financing. Why on earth would a seller ever give me the existing financing? Well, if the house is worth $200,000 on the open market and say they owe $195,000, they can't sell it traditionally because they'll owe a check at the closing table, and they don't want to do that. So you probably put a marketing piece, or you got in connection with them on a referral, and they like your offer that you can pay them the value of it without pulling money out of, it's not going to cost them anything. And the advantage is they don't go in foreclosure, they don't owe any money, and their credit doesn't get tapped. Now, how do I get another loan? The truth of the matter is if they have to go buy another house right then and there, most likely you cannot solve their problem. Now, if they're motivated enough to do this, typically they're very flexible because they're upside down on the property or like at break even. There is a technique whereas once you take over the loan and you make regular payments, you can actually, there's a term they do it is called debt to income ratio, but it usually takes a minimum 6 months, if not 1 year. Every bank's a little bit different. So say you were renting that house out for $1,000, you got someone making money. They can take that $1,000 and they can write that off to their DTI ratio, which is debt to income. And they usually get between 70 and 80%. So say the mortgage was costing them $750 a month and you took it over and you're renting it out for $1,000, however you sold it, rental, wraparound, whatever you did. If you took say 70 or 80%, let's just call it $750, that would offset that DTI and allow them to get the other loan. Because remember, in the bank's eyes, that's still that would be an income producing asset as opposed to just a liability. The problem is it does need time. So if you try to just get that right away, it's probably not going to work. You don't want to put them in a worse situation than they already in. The reality is if they don't sell that house, there's no way they can buy the new house. Most people in a subject to, they're usually moving in with someone or they're moving into a rental property. And that's part of their motivation of doing the deal. I hope that helps with that one. So good question though. Okay, lightning round here. Keith, okay, I got a little bit more on that. Keith's question, you have to stand out more with your cold calling because it all sounds the same after a while. I get it, man. We talk about saturation. Everybody's cold calling. Realtors are cold calling. Insurance agents are cold calling. I believe, I'm going to put this up here. I got some help with it. Hold on. Do this. Go to my website. We've created a cold calling script. As I told you, Zach's the master at it. He's done probably 100,000 cold calls. And one of the secrets we found out was not asking the typical question up front. So it's people know when you're scripted, man. So you got to be careful not to be so scripted, but not to shock them with a question where they're actually going to hang up with you. So if you go to my site, I'll give you the free cold calling script. That'll help you out and give you some ideas. It's all in how you frame it and set up that initial question. Yes, you got to be efficient with your time, but hopefully that helps out with you. So I'm going to leave that up just for a minute. Oh, here's a good one. Okay. So write that down, Keith. If not, I'll find a way to put it in the comments afterwards here. Okay, I'm going through lightning round here. So as long as I have questions, I'll keep going. Tigo, are you a brother? I got a brother. So we're all friends. Okay. Blessings to everyone. Back to you. Tigo, I hope you're staying safe in those crazy world times. Hopefully you're doing some real estate or you're getting ready to get started too. Brian says, great information. By the way, we do these every Friday evening. So Zach normally does them. So I told him, I go, let me jump on there, man. I know a thing or two about real estate. Phil's awesome question. How is your business different today than 5 years ago? That's a great one. Hold on, let me check here. Now, see, so let me start out. Tigo, I apologize for the, I'm not good with acronyms, and for full disclosure, I'm 50. So Zach is he's more in tune with the younger crowd, and I apologize for my not knowing the HRU. So it's, how are you? I apologize, my bad. Okay, Phil asks, how's your business different today than 5 years ago? The number one thing I think is the age of technology and how we're talking has made you guys ridiculously smarter. Before, to get this information, you had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars, and now you're getting it free. So more people are diving into wholesaling than ever. What happens with that? It creates saturation. The problem is so many people are marketing that sellers get a false presence that, you know, everybody wants my house. And that's the biggest thing I can see as a difference is saturation. The reality, though, is if you're going to go deep in real estate and do this for the long term, you actually have to learn the business. So it's great to become a marketing, but you still have to figure out the contracts. You still got to figure out how to negotiate, and you got to figure out how to attract cash buyers, and you got to figure out what your niche is. I don't like rehabs. I tried that. I don't like landlording. It just sucks. There's no other word for it. It's tough. I like doing the deal. Actually, when the deal's inked and done, I'm bored to death. I make my money. It's the thrill of the hunt. So any of you guys go hunting or you go fishing, or like you ladies who go out and do your shopping, it's the thrill of the hunt that just drives me, and it really excites me to this day. The biggest change I've seen in the last 3 years is the technology. So being able to get information at your fingertips is unbelievable. I can get someone's mortgage balance. I can get all their information at a click of a button. I can run the comps. I don't need realtors. When I started, I had to use realtors. And honestly, SMS and cold calling, SMS being really the biggest change I've seen, the biggest impact in the last 5 years. And the technology put together with cold calling, insane. So the problem is, you can automate this business as much as you want. you still have to connect with people. We are in the business of solving people's problems. And as much as technology can help you get closer to them, you still have to go out and do it. I'm an old school guy. I like to meet people in person because I get the best deals. I usually make double what I do if I can do it in person. With COVID-19, I'm assuming, Phil, we're not talking about that because we're all dealing with it, is, doing it virtual it's just, you don't get the connection. See, Phil, if I meet you in person, I can connect with you on a much deeper level because I can use my eyesight. I can smell the senses around me. I can reach out, I can shake your hand, and it creates a deeper connection. If I try to do the same thing on the phone, there's no freaking way. Now, do I do virtual deals? Absolutely. But if I have the choice to meet somebody in person, I know it's much easier to do a deal virtually, but if I can show you how to make an extra $10,000 by taking an hour of your time to meet with someone, which do you prefer to do? Okay, so unless you got like 500 deals on your plate, even if I got 5 or 10 deals I'm working, which is common, I'm going to make a point to go out and try to visit them as much as possible. And by the way, whoever meets with your seller, it should be the most important person in your business. They should have a tie-in to the bottom line. So ask me how I know this. So that's one of Zach's primary duties. And then I still go out and do appointments for overflow. I love it, man. It's like a sport to me. So cool. Okay. Getting down to the last few questions, guys. Put them in there if you want them. If not, we'll call it a night. Keith's asking, I've had sellers repeat my script to me from another caller. I agree. So we're talking tonight. We're talking a lot about saturation. So change it. So here's one of the things I did when I create my marketing products is I look through my database. And by the way, guys, you don't need a database if you're just starting out. If you got a yellow pad or a white pad, just use that. I asked what the biggest objection the sellers had. And I would take that objection and I go, okay, well, let's just solve it up front. So if you know what their number one objection is in cold calling, it's just, guys, type in the comments if you know what the number one objection of cold calling is, because I know what it is. What's the first thing they spit out to you? I don't care what your introduction is. What's the first thing? Actually, there's 2 questions I know of. They're going to give you an initial objection and they're going to give you a follow-up one. So I'm going to give a couple minutes and come back to it. Keith, you just be authentic in your script. There's a difference between being authentic and being efficient. If you're too efficient, you're never going to be authentic. And if you're so authentic, you're taking 20 minutes with each customer, you're never going to have a business. You got to find that balance there. So do that. I will tell you inside my, where did I put it? Inside of my priority probate system, we actually give you this script. So by the way, scripts with probates are completely different than what you're going to do with, just regular cold calling. It's a much warmer call. So, okay. So I put that up there. Everybody knows where to get the scripts. Guys, you can write your own scripts. There's no rules to it. The most important is that first 15, 20 seconds. If you can't figure that part out, don't worry about the rest of the script. You're going to get killed. Okay, let me take this off here. See, Zach usually does the technology. You can tell when I do it. So I'll go back to you. Okay, Phil, I'll come back to you. So I asked about the 2 how'd you get my number? That's one of the questions. So the real Charlie Brown, and God, I love that name. You're right. How'd you get my number? So what's the one question before they ask how we got that number? 9 times out of 10 again, who is this, right? Who is this? Because even when you tell them, hey, this is Rick Ginn, I'm calling to buy your house, they don't listen to half of what you say because they're trying to figure out who this is. They're trying to figure out if you're a friend or a foe. And so the first thing they're going to ask, who is this? You should have a launch script ready to go. Hey, this is, Hey, my name's Rick, and my name is Rick, and I just want to find out if you're the owner of 123 USA Street. Oh, yeah, yeah. And then you're right. The next one is, how did you get my number? And I got to give credit to Zach on this one. He came up with it, and because we tried everything when we were doing probate cold calling, and the problem is most investors get hung up on it. So if you practice your script around these two questions and you get past that initial resistance, you're going to have a much more open-minded person to do business with you. So how'd you get my number? Hey, Charlie, I'm glad you asked that question. Actually, my partner gave me your number, and he said he drove by your house on 123 USA and thought you might be considering selling it. Is that something you're open to? Is that something you want to talk about? That's simple. If you sit there and I've watched all you guys go like this, they go, yeah, my marketing department's good. You've got to pass the buck a little bit. Like, hey, listen, I'm just, in the beginning, we used to say, listen, I'm just doing my job here. Like they give me phone numbers and I call through them. So they make, that's one way you can make them feel guilty for you. Like, oh, okay, I get it. But say, listen, my partner drove by the property, thought it might be a great property to buy. Is it something you're interested in selling? The problem is if you start the confrontation like, don't worry about how I got the number, or I got it off of a list, and then you go in these series of BS questions. What list did you get it from? How do I get off that list? What do I do? Give me a break. Like, don't spend time on that. The worst case scenario I'm going to say is take me off your list. Go, yeah, not a problem, and move on. So how'd you get my numbers? The second question, and who is this? If you can script your answers around that, it will help you phenomenally. Check out our cold calling script. It deals with both those. So I hope that helps. Good one, Charlie. And I should really have a prize for Charlie. All right, Charlie, come on next week, and I'll make sure Zach has something for you. I always got something laying around. Something. So, and then Charlie said, my marketing part, that's a good way to do it too. The only problem I have with that one is it sounds like you're a big corporation then. So by saying my partner, sometimes you can say my wife, my brother, my sister, my cousin, gave me your number, and then they're not going to ask how they got the number. That's a good, and you know what? If they ask you how they got the number, what are you going to say? I don't know. I don't know. But listen, when I got you on the phone, have you ever thought about selling that property? No. And it's that simple to go from there. Okay, I got 2 questions left here. We're going to wrap this up. If you squeeze a question in the next 2 minutes, I will answer it for you. So Phil asked, what do you think about change in the next 3 to 5 years? Great question. So going forward, oh, that's a good one. I will tell you for the next 18 months going, if you're not doing some sort of creative financing, you're not going to be able to fill your pipeline up as much as possible. There's going to be a huge wave. I shared the numbers with you. Delinquency rates in double percentages, which were normally around 3%. I'm looking at the mortgage forecast. It's scheduled to go up to 15, 16%. What happens if it gets to like 20%? That means if you had 10 people, 2 out of the 10 are behind on their mortgage. Now, there's a lot of households in the United States. That's a ton. The tenants, when they can't pay, you're going to drive landlords nuts. So there's going to be a large wave of creative financing. You guys got to go out and learn how to do it like correctly. But I love creative. Like, I don't go out and like purposely chase creative financing, but when the opportunity presents itself, I know how to take them down. So if a deal doesn't work out traditionally wholesaling and there's a mortgage I can take over and they just want to get out of the property, then you can quickly switch your hats and you can help them solve a problem, and you solve their problem, you make money, and you become a true service to your industry. So biggest change, obviously, technology is going to keep changing. And I think legislation is going to have an impact over the next 3 to 5 years. We talked about, are they going to make wholesaling illegal in your state or not? You got to keep up on that. The Frank Dodd Act for creative financing, it's going to have a big impact on how we take these properties. What's the other hot button we got going on? Disruptive marketing. So we talk about SMS and cold calling. RVM is illegal in my state. I believe the fine's $10,000 per incident, and they're going after almost everybody now. So I believe disruptive marketing is, unfortunately, if you're not doing SMS right now, if you can do RVM legally, but you need to check with your state and local laws. And cold calling, you have a window. I think in 3 to 5 years, a lot of those are going to be hampered on, because I think people are getting annoyed with them. As much as I love them, but I get it on both sides, if you know what I mean. So disruptive marketing and laws restricting, basically wholesaling, you're going to have to get some sort of like real estate license. So sucks, but no big deal. If you can get a license and move on, if you really want to do this business, you just got to be more careful with your disclosures, particularly on marketing. So, okay. Oh God, keep it up with the questions, you'll have it. Yeah, they're talking about taking my football away, and I'm pissed. So don't get me started on that. Okay, let's see here. Okay, down to 2 questions, guys. So unless you fill it up, we're done here. LA Prepper bought a house and only regret is not crawling under the house because I found a sewer pipe from the garage was flowing uphill. How the heck does that happen? So he's talking about depending, like different locations. I assume the house had a crawl space and you can get under and do it. I will tell you this, with crawl space houses, you're better off spending like just $100, $150 and having them inspected. I had this exact same thing happen to me. What happens is when you go to sell a house with a crawl space under it, so in Florida, if it has a crawl space, it's usually an older home or someone built the house on themselves. It means it's not built on a concrete foundation. So we don't have basements here in Florida. So wish we did, but we don't because we're in swampland. But what happens is they build a, I think it's a 2x6. I'm not a builder. So if a builder wants to chime in and tell me what to do with it, it winds up, they build it on a wooden platform. So the problem is when you go to sell it, if you're going to sell it like a wholesale, like we like to do a lot, most people want to get the property inspected. They get an inspector and they go underneath and they can look at every inch of plumbing. And if there's the slightest issue, you're typically screwed. So if you're going to buy something with a crawl space, just pay to get it inspected ahead of time. And then usually you can get it discounted off. Hopefully, LA Prepper, you got something. Hopefully there was enough money on there to overcome that problem. But I agree with you. I had once where the toilet, you ready for this? It was dumping into the ground. I don't know if the owner even knew it. It was actually a rental house. They built like a basin and all the, I mean, I don't need to go on the graphics here, but it was bad. And it cost a couple grand to fix it. And I didn't get it inspected. I went through the same thing you went through. So if you have a house that does not fit your norm and you're uncomfortable about it, just pay someone to inspect it. And if you have a relationship with a contractor, you can really fix that. So sorry to hear that, LA Prepper. Hopefully there's enough meat on the bone to make it work for you. So, okay, I've got one question. I'm done. Ever tried radio? I did radio back in 2004 and 5. I don't listen to a radio. So, I don't know. I guess it works. I mean, it's cheap because it's a dying industry. So, I wouldn't spend my money on radio. It doesn't make sense. I don't think anyone's really listening to a radio. And then if you're going for the older demographics, I don't think they really actually listen to a radio. So I get everything streamed to me on the internet. I can't tell you when the last time I've turned on a radio. So maybe other than like a little bit of sports talk or like financial news, but I wouldn't do that. Facebook, yeah, I've done Facebook. Here's the deal with Facebook. Everyone gets confused and they think because the leads are cheap, the cost per lead, the CPL, and they go, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You got to understand, when somebody goes on Facebook, their intention is not to go on Facebook to sell their house. It's a subliminal thought when they come across your ad. Do people make money off Facebook? Absolutely. It's just not. We did a long campaign on it, spent a lot of money on it. And then I get a lot of leads from wholesalers trying to flip me deals off Facebook. The problem is the conversion rate on the leads are very, very, very low. And that's, I don't care if the lead costs you 10 or 12 bucks. It doesn't matter. If you spend $5,000 and you can't produce a deal off of it, at some point you have to make a decision on it. So now if you go on like Google or something like that, then people are searching with intention with keywords, but that's why the Google, the keywords are so dang expensive. So Facebook, it's a long conversion process. Typically 6 to 12 months, if not longer. I've used Facebook when I owned a real estate agency, and it's good for realtors, but they all complain that it takes them a very, very long time. So that's the drawback of Facebook. It's cheap to get into, and it's constantly moving their parameters for you to advertise. So you have to stay very update. Facebook will take your money so fast you won't know what hits you because it's cheap. But to get everybody in for 500 bucks, and you got to keep spending money. And YouTube ads, I don't know. I haven't done YouTube ads. I'm sorry, YouTube ads. So I wouldn't do that. So all three of these, unless you want to go big, and I mean big, have a $50,000 budget, you should be staying away from these. If you like Facebook and you truly understand how to do the ads and how to analyze the data and you can do it yourself, then knock yourself out. But test the data out and make sure you know how to convert the leads. So good question. Okay, I got a question from Mr. Jackson. Do you ever wholesale properties from the MLS? It's possible. Do I do it? I like to use MLS to sell my properties because it's a faceless transaction for me. I'll pay a realtor. I'll list it. I list it way above what I would get on a typical wholesale fee, and I know I have enough money to pay the realtor. Possible, discounts for inspections. The problem is we have a love-hate relationship with realtors, and that's the real challenge. So if you're talking about taking a property off MLS, contracting it, and turning around and selling it, it is an uphill battle, and it's a challenge to do. I wouldn't recommend doing it. I think there's better ways to do it. I like to use MLS to sell my properties. But once again, there's a lot of rules realtors have as far as, do you have to be the owner of the property? Do you have to have a contract? In our world, if you're going to be a true wholesaler and assign the property, putting it on MLS would be a problem. If you're talking about contracting a property on MLS, I've seen people do it. The profit margins are very discouraging. So unless you have a particular buyer that's looking for that particular property and you beat them to the punch, that's the only way I would consider doing what I call a wholesale property off MLS. The buyer's got to want that house, got to know that house, and you have access to that house and you got it under contract. And then you want to work with a title company to figure out how to do that. So, okay, last question, guys. I'm going to wrap this up. So 30 seconds, last question. Went down to my courthouse, but it was closed due to COVID, and they are not online. What do you recommend? Charlie, the only thing left you can do is try to find someone. There's a big misconception that the courthouses aren't closed. They're just limiting access. So the COVID thing, they all have different rules, different states. I get it. So what I would try to do is start with a title company. If you have a good relationship with your local title company, they usually have access to all the online files, particularly for probates. If you have access to an attorney you've done business with, you might be able to come up with some sort of an agreement with them to get access to that information. He would need business exchange, or you wind up doing it for a fee. Check with your state laws. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here, but if you can connect with that lawyer title, and the other one I mentioned before was paralegals. You might have to pay for the SSV form, but it'd be well worth it, because if you use a online vendor, they usually charge $100 per county per month. And if you're doing 3 or 4 counties, it gets expensive real quick. So if it's a couple $100 to get access to it and they can do it, God bless them. So Charlie, just find, you guys are going to constantly have obstacles to come up with wholesaling, real estate in general. It's up to you to find a way to either knock down that barrier legally, ethically, and you got to keep going. I got started in probates because I found out those are the most profitable deals I was doing naturally from wholesaling. I didn't know the first thing how to do a wholesale till not a wholesale, a probate until 2013. And my biggest regret is I didn't start in 2003 and 4, just focusing on probate. So I love probates, guys. If you want to figure out how to do probates, or you want to use my exact system, it's a simple online course. It's well worth it. It is awesome. It's called the Priority Probate System. I think we're running it on sale right now, and you can learn it in the convenience of your home. I walk you through the scripts, exactly how to pull the list and do everything. I get it, Charlie. We have to deal with these issues. COVID's only made it tougher, but keep in mind, if you're having this many problems, I promise you everyone else around you, they're just going to quit. So just keep doing it. Keep pressing to the answer. Try to partner up with someone to work with them. Hope you guys got value from this. We're on every Friday night, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Zach will probably be on here next week, or maybe we'll have to do like a joint thing. And so like work on your questions. Feel free to email any questions you have. You can do it to support@flipwithrick.com. You can hook us up. We are on Instagram, Facebook, obviously YouTube, just under Flip with Rick. If you put questions there, we'll be able to answer them each and every Friday night. And what else do I have? For those of you that want to learn more about it, you like what I say, if you want to really elevate your real estate investing game, I do work with select individuals and show them actually how to do exactly what I do. And we do like an entire year program. You can't learn this entire business in 3 months. And I basically show you 17 years step-by-step of everything I do. And it's an all access system to all my marketing techniques, handwritten postcard, my priority probate system training, my rapid offer system, which is not even available. Only my students have it available right now, but it will be coming out soon for everyone. I appreciate it, guys. Post your comments, subscribe to us on YouTube, and you guys have an awesome weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for spending time with me. Thanks.